Okay, how can I test this? Meetings. I need to spend way more time trying to figure this out. I think I've got the meeting running, but I'm not sure if anybody can hear me. I'm not sure if it's recording. Test. Okay, the meeting starts. How can I tell if I'm doing anything? Let's test. Documentation, edits, words. No, you didn't do that. That's going to do here. He's going to do like if he brings it to the cat man. Let me get this set up to work. Now we'll get started here in a minute. Let me get the papers.
How are you? Great. I'm good. How about you? Great. Great. Ah, I should take my day where I go. She's becoming my phone. I can under. It's kind of happy. Yeah. Yeah, Yeah, it's trying to put a back through the hell. Oh. With the shit.
I'm running a little late.
Well, I felt you're sick. Oh. Well, I think. Okay. Well, then I'm not late then. Oh. I just. Oh, yeah. You gotta look down and take you up there. Okay. You can go do that.
No,
Oh, no.
how much wish you
Well, we have the Zoom call started. I just can't tell if it's doing anything. In progress.
I don't believe it. Sometimes I hope I don't disturb you when I believe. If you probably would have. Yeah, no, I'll believe that. Okay, okay, so you know. All right.
Well, we'll give a few more minutes and anybody want some water?
I don't.
You want water? With it?
Yeah. I do. What's your name again? What's your name again? Renee and Jerry. My husband. Renee, yeah. Second, my other husband, that right up here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, your brother married? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just. Irish. Yeah. I've been single for, probably for a long time. Probably, let's see, 15 years. Yeah, yeah. You trying to be single for the rest of my life. Yeah. Nobody would have me. Yeah. I'm out of my way. Oh, you're fine. You're very nice, thank you. Thank you. You're good. Okay.
Okay. Where's my glasses so I can see the other end of the room? Oh, there we are. There you guys are. Okay. So how's everybody doing today?
Doing okay.
Doing okay.
Not complete, but pretty good.
Well, I know the feeling. I was finishing this up about an hour ago. Or trying to. We got as far as we did, but man. I'm gonna say, if you want to go that way, I can get up, but down to So if it's actually working, that maybe it'll catch the conversation. Oh.
Green lights on.
Hmm?
The green lights.
Green light's on, so it must be working, right? Works for me.
I got next week, correct?
Yes.
No, I missed the last couple of our meetings.
Yeah. I'll check. I thought I sent you out.
I'm sure you probably did, but I don't have a handout.
Okay. All right, I'll send stuff to you this soon. Okay. Any prayer requests this evening? Get started. Okay. Pastor Greg, can you lead us in prayer to start with?
I sure can. Heavenly Father, we're grateful, we're thankful for this beautiful day that you've given us. We're thankful for all those that are here tonight. We're thankful we can gather together to learn more about your word. Lord, I just pray and ask, dear God, that you just reach down in a very, very special way, Lord Jesus. Bless our brother, dear God, as he teaches tonight. Just reach down and anoint him. God, anoint our ears that we might be able to hear. We pray and we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, that's working. Okay, thought we'd go over the review questions, get those out of the way so that we don't run out of time at the end. This is out of the workbook, the review questions I put on your sheet. From the book, they wanted us to define particular words. Hexatuke, basically just instead of the Pentateuch, which means 5, hexa is 6. Early in the 20th century, scholars were assuming that the writers of the Pentateuch, the group of different groups that came together, or traditions that they stitched together to create the Pentateuch, was also the same in Joshua. So it was, instead of the Pentateuch, scholars were calling it the Hexateuch, which none of that really makes a whole lot of difference to anybody, but it was a question. Deterministic, all the events that happen are set before they happen, regardless of the context or outside force. Etiological legend. This is one of the academics' bias, I think, but I've got a rant already written into on academic bias. Basically, it's a fictional story contrived to answer, say, how did the tables get here? We can say that, a giant came in through the door and set up all the tables, and they just happen every Wednesday. That would be, etiological legend, things that just, that a group of people make up to answer a question of why something happened or how something got where it's at.
You really see that a lot too, like the way they like to explain the Red Sea parted and different things like that. They like to come up with some kind of theory that's just way out there.
Yeah, most academics discount or prone to discount
Miracles.
almost anything in the Bible, not just miracles, as being not being historical or being made up to prove to show a point. The Hyksos is a group of pharaohs that ruled in 1782 to 1550. They were non-Egyptians. Hey, Matt, can you see if this is the audio is working on this? The Hyksos rulers were. How do you say it's not? I know. I don't know how to tell whether it is. Okay. The Hyksos dynasty was a dynasty of pharaohs that were probably originally from Canaan. There's no clear definition on how they came to power, whether they formed a coup and took over the lower dynasty or the lower Egyptian. So that would be the Delta and partway up the Nile. They're most likely associated with Joseph, because when I forget what it's Amherst the first chased the Hyksos out of the lower Egypt. The new pharaoh didn't know Joseph, and that's where the enslavement began. What is the purpose of the book of Joshua? It shows that God fulfills his covenant promises. If anybody's got any other answers to these, speak up, but I try to keep my answers as short and sweet as possible. What are the main 4 sections of the book of Joshua? I didn't include chapters because we're going to go through these. Entrance into the land, the conquest, land allotment, and covenant issues. What are some of the reasons the early date of the book of Joshua composition? A number of elements in the book of Joshua suggest an early date for its composition. The most convincing is Joshua 16:10, mentions the Canaanites were driven out of Gezer and were not driven out of Gezer and lived there to this day. But in 1 Kings 9:16 reports that the Pharaoh conquered Gezer and killed all the Canaanites that lived there, and that would have been afterwards. This suggests that Joshua was written before the time of Solomon. Another example includes Joshua 15:63, which records that the Jebusites were still in Jerusalem, and in 13:6, which emphasizes Sidon or the Sidonians rather than the city of Tyre. We got a map here. Sidon would be up here. The Sidonian would have been replaced by Tyre. during probably the late Bronze Age collapse or earlier. Because Farragut and Biblon were also in that same area that the Sea Peoples were overrun during that time.
I got a question on that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, but this would have been, Joshua technically probably would have been written pre-exile then.
So that's what they're saying.
It was probably written before the Pentateuch.
It was possibly, it depends on how you date things,
Okay, fair enough.
you know.
It doesn't
They,
matter. I was just curious.
there's some people that date the Pentateuch clear into the First Temple period, which is extremely late. But the final canon for the Old Testament, if I remember right, it was actually in the Common Era before, because if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a lot of books that they had in their libraries that wouldn't have been normal text within what we consider the canonical Old Testament. So it wasn't necessarily as unified as of a centralized religion as one would like. Let's see. Another one that I just thought of is the circumcision. They took stone knives. Stone knives would have been well outdated by early Bronze Age. Copper Age, maybe not so much, but of course, stone knives are extremely sharp. So compared to, what bronze or copper would have. So by the time we're into Joshua, we're well into the Iron Age. We have several references to iron chariots and so it's probably Iron Age 1. What is the date ranges with the events of Joshua surely took place? It all depends. The earliest dates would be the 1400s, which I have too many zeros there.
14,000.
14,000s.
Wide date range.
That's a wide date range. I left a little room to wiggle there.
You can capture.
Yeah. More and more, I'm liking the earlier date with some of the archaeological evidence, I think works. If you work on the premises, a lot of the people looking at the later dates were looking at some of the surrounding countries or nation states don't show up until later, but they could have been, like Moab and I can't think of the other state down there. A few names of proper seaport cities: Byblos, Urgut, and Sidon. Sidon is up here. Byblos would have been like near Ascalon, and Tyre would have been like Urgut. These were intricate parts of the trading system during the pre-Israel, between the Hittites that would have been way up in north of the Levant in what's modern day Turkey, the Hessians that would be over more towards the Mesopotamia. And then Israel would have come up, clear up into almost Megiddo. Or Egypt would have come clear up from Megiddo. Why did the city-states of the Levant write letters to the Egyptians? Why did the diminishing Egyptian control cause a problem? Many of the city-states that Joshua mentions were client kings or client states of Egypt. And this is if we take the earlier date. We get past the 1250 or so, we're middle age bronze collapse, and most of the Egyptian control would have been gone by then. Because Egypt shrank clear down to just areas around the Nile. I think that's, you can get into that further on. As client states, they would be paying taxes to Egypt. They'd be providing soldiers and slaves and what, whatever the master needed. But in return, there's usually an agreement: if we're attacked, you will come help us. As Egypt's power and prestige and their ability to extend that far out diminishes, the city-states are pretty much on their own, and leave them vulnerable to attack. Who are the major players in the Battle of Kadesh? The major players are Egypt and the Hittite Empire. Both armies fought to a stalemate. They came up with an agreement, and this is post-agreement. The Egyptian Empire was huge and extended up to here. Urgut, the Hittites, I'm going to mispronounce most of these words, so if you know what they're supposed to sound like, let me know. The Mitanni Empire was taken over by the Hittites, so this whole area was taken over and created a power vacuum for the Assyrian Empire to expand. And eventually Assyria is the country that came through and destroyed the northern kingdoms after the unified kingdoms of Solomon and David, or David and Solomon.
So how is Battle of Kadesh related to Joshua then?
Well, that's a good question.
Oh, I'm just curious.
What was it backwards? I'm going backwards. Other than showing that Egypt was in control of the Levant area, the southern part of the Levant area, and the Hittites were control of the north. It didn't mean that they always had troops there or they had massive troops there, but they were all client kings. So,
I got a question about 4. Is the letters written to the Egyptians, is that historical evidence?
we'll get to that. Yes. Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, the Amarna letters are really cool. Regardless of the date of the conquest, what role did Egyptian influence play in the conquest? Egyptian influence had diminished by the time Joshua had crossed the Jordan River. They didn't have the firepower to go up and defend their client states. Because we don't read, I haven't seen a whole lot where there was a lot of battles between particular pharaohs and Israel. I think there was a couple, but not enough to. And we go to labeling. Label all the territories of the maps. I think I provided maps so that you can see them, because you usually can't see this far. There's two different maps from two different cartographers. This one is nice and plain, the straight lines. This one is a little fuzzier. You can see that the distribution of the land was not equal or even. Manasseh seemed to do real well. Judah did real well. Benjamin must have been a small tribe. Zebulun was a small tribe. So they're kind of distributed. At the time of the distribution of the land, the whole land had not been taken. The tribes were meant to go and subdue the residents. We'll get into how they do that, and that causes problems for a lot of people. Key people. Joshua is a leader God chose after Moses' death. In the book of Joshua, he is portrayed as the new Moses. Joshua was one of the spies that Moses sent into the promised land. He was one of the two that came back that said, yeah, we can do this. God's with us. And Caleb was the second of those spies. Both of them were from the tribe of Judah, which is curious. But they picked two from each tribe to send out at some point in time. Lacan, we will talk about later, but he stole the spoils taken from Jericho that were devoted to God. Joshua ended up playing judge, the same as Moses would have. And he and his family were stoned and burnt. They were buried in the valley where they were killed under a pile of stones. And I think they put this in for a comparison. Korath was a contemporary of Moses, who's best known to man swallowed alive by earth, along with his family and associates, for revolting against Moses.
You know, one of the things that I'd like to just point out, really, man, I've studied and pastor the last 50 years, I guess. But a lot of times we think we can do what we want to do and it affects us. But with Achan, it affected his whole family, everything he owned, even his dog, you know, I mean, they got rid of everything.
Yeah, the tent.
And so it's the same way in church with pastors that fall. It doesn't just affect them, doesn't just affect their family, it affects the church family. And so there's just so much to be garnished from that, I think. Myself, I just feel that that's probably one of the biggest lessons in Joshua is, hey, it isn't just you, it's, you know, you affect so many people around.
Our actions impact wider than what we might see or ever know. Yeah.
And I don't mean to be interrupted.
Oh, no,
but I just,
no, please. Let's see. Rahab the Canaanite prostitute who showed faith in Yahweh and was saved from the destruction when God defeated Jericho. And we'll get into Rahab. I like Rahab story a lot. Set in the scene of Jericho. Like we said earlier, the view of Joshua was part of the Exodus, based on the assumption of Pentateuch sources in chapter 3, which is the priestly, the Yahwist, the Elohimist, and there was a second priestly group that is a priestly Chew, is what the groups that scholars identified as contributing to the Pentateuch. Was traced through to Joshua, but this is largely been rejected in favor of the Deuteronomist school, which is responsible for the composition of the historical books Joshua through 2 Kings. If Joshua is included in the Deuteronomistic history, the date set for the writing of the book is dictated by one of the theories regarding the Deuteronomistic schools. Scholars attributed the foundation of the school to the book of Deuteronomy, first compiled in the late 7th century. Accepted by Joshua as the basis, reform must be necessary for the historical writing of Josiah's time or later, which I'm not sure what time frame that is. Scholars are open to earlier dates of Deuteronomy, however, are liable to consider a much wider date of composition of this historical. Then we go to historicity. We'll get through this boring part. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of academics assume that everything in the Bible is fable and has little historical value. But you give them an inscription from Egypt, and they tend to say, "Oh yeah, this is what happened," and they don't have the same scrutiny. I think there's a bias on that. The etymological functional story that fictional. Let's see. Yeah, fictional story contrived to explain the phenomenon or situation. Anybody got, we've talked about that in the first part in the review. We're now entering a time period where there is some evidence of the existence of peoples and cities and states. I'll address these through the lesson. I may not do them all here. I did find a Christian source that seems fairly legitimate, that looks at the Bible from a realistic point of view and draws a lot of lines and a lot of things. It's worth looking at the biblicalarchaeology.org. They've got a lot of resources. They also have a lot of video stuff out there. I think they also have a TV